You're listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.
Like
Sharper.
this close, but this height, this length.
I think it sounds good.
I'm nervous.
Don't be nervous. Don't be nervous. Carla's here and Katie's here. Water-wise, everybody good?
Yes.
All right, because we're rolling. Mackey Alvarez, I am super excited to have you here. So I told you earlier why I kind of started the podcast. And when I was kind of coming up with a list of people a long time ago that I wanted to do, you were on it. And then I actually had a conversation. We scheduled something, and we set up a time and date to have you out. And it was funny because I talked to Dad last weekend. And, the older we get, the fewer weddings we go to and the more funerals we go to. And I guess you had spoke at a funeral in town recently, maybe the past couple of weeks or so. And so Dad said, you know what? I want Mackey to talk at my funeral. And I said, what about me? And he said, nah. He said, just, you can talk, but just make sure you got Mackey there. So you are from Georgia, West Texas, my hometown. I went to high school with your son, Boom. And you've always been involved in a lot of things that I see. And like I told you a minute ago, if it's a funeral, if it's a graduation, if it's a party or a fundraiser, you are there. And in my opinion, you are forever Miss Live Oak County. That's what I think.
Thank you. So what a wonderful opportunity it is to be here with children that grew up with my children, and now they're successful young men. And like he said, my name is Mackey Alvarez, but let me give you my full name, Maria Magdalena Garcia. And then I added the Alvarez to it. But I became Mackey when I was born in March 18th of 1953. Because
you recently had a birthday.
Yes, sir.
Happy
69
birthday.
And doing fine. My brother, who was stationed in Alaska, in Anchorage, received word that he had a baby sister because I am the baby of 9.
Oh, okay.
So he kind of didn't like that name, Magdalena, and
I think it's beautiful.
Being with the Eskimos, we figured he thought that Mackey was more appropriate.
Oh, really?
So when I was growing up, my dad told me that he honored my older brother, Renato, who we know as Sapo, that wish to say, okay, he's not here, he's not going to see her, so her name is Mackey. So being that, it stayed forever and ever. Now, get this. If I try to cash a check and it's made out to Magdalena, they'll say, oh, I'm sorry, she has to be here. And so I have to show ID.
That is hilarious. Everybody knows you as Mackey. Yes. And it's such an original name because I can't think of anybody that has ever been called that. So it's interesting that he even came up with that name. That's awesome.
I was born in a hospital. I think I was one of the few born in my family to be born in a hospital in Beeville Hospital. And I was the last of children, so we were very proud of the fact that I was going to be the baby. But then, you know how we are in our culture. My grandmother lived right next door in the barrio. We live in the Manchaca barrio. Mm-hmm. And so she saw that, and then my mother had other children. We were not close in age. My sister is 10 years older than me, and my brother is 6 years older than I am. So you know how you have that inspiration to say, ay, mijo, she's so pretty. Dámela. I don't think my dad or my mom hesitated on that wish and that request. So for 6 years, I lived with my grandmother, Maria Teresa Garcia, right next door in the barrio. And, you know, I learned a lot from them. I learned that I had a loving grandmother, but I also learned that I had loving parents because they made that sacrifice. We lived like 2 feet away. We were neighbors, but her little house was 2 feet away, and then we lived in the house. She did not have indoor plumbing. We did. Okay. She did not have a bathroom, but we did. A shower and you know, things like that nature. But it was fun. I loved it. I had my own bed. but I went to eat next door all the time. and being hers and my parents, I got very spoiled from both. Then it was time to go to school. Ooh, that was not a happy thing because I had to leave my grandmother and go to school. Upon her death that we lost her, it was very sad.
Yeah.
And in those days, Gabe, we had the rosaries and the visitations at home, but I didn't want her to be in our house. I wanted it to be in the house that her and I shared. But that was not possible because it wouldn't accommodate all the things that needed to be done. So I felt kind of sad because in my heart, I felt this was my mom and dad's home with me coming on, but this was not her home. I wanted them to see her in her home, but that didn't happen. So it took a toll on all of us. I missed her a lot.
How old were you at that time?
I was 8 years old.
Oh, okay, so you were still little.
I was still little, but we had a bonding together. And that's funny that you say at the funerals that people want me to talk in their funerals, because I think at that time, I was introduced to the love of being in funerals. My dad, my mom, there was not a funeral that they did not attend.
Yeah.
Because we knew each other and we helped each other in circumstances of losing a loved one. And in those days, you took care of family at home. There wasn't, I don't recall a funeral home in George West till way much later.
Oh, really?
So that introduced me to that. And I would go to all these funerals.
Let me ask you this. You know, I try real hard to make as many funerals as I can. And in my opinion, it's kind of my opportunity to pay my final respect to somebody. You know, maybe even if it's somebody I haven't seen in a long time. And I think as I get older, I can handle it a little better. But I tried to go to as many as I could. And it was just a huge weight, you know, being at these funerals and seeing people hurting and missing. And so I know when we lost my brother Ed, you were there. And you told me earlier that you work at Galloway's now, or that's one of your jobs. I think you have like 7.
Almost.
But, you know, what is your, how can you tell somebody, because you're involved in a lot of funerals then, how do you approach it, or what's happening at the funeral that you're seeing that somebody else isn't, that keeps you from getting emotionally drugged down, I guess?
I think the first thing you have to do is you have to tell yourself, I am here and I have a purpose to be with this loving family. You know, you want to say, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss. And I think that as you get older, you don't want to say, oh, I know how you feel.
Sure.
Because it's kind of hard. And some people don't like for you to tell them that because we may not know how they feel. So I think the important thing to say is respect and love. Show the respect and say, oh, I loved your brother. He, you know, and share a memory. I've learned that sometimes the family is very heartbroken and taken away from a sudden death or someone that was killed in an accident, or that, you know, COVID took them, or whatever the circumstances were that bring them sadness. It enlightens their heart when you're able to share and say, when I was in the 6th grade, your son was a friend of the family of my brother, and he just had such a good time. We laughed, we shared. Or if it's an older person and, you know, just say, oh, I remember when your mom and dad were always at our parties or at the festivals, or I missed seeing your dad at football games when he wasn't there, but I know that, you know, he'll be cheering you on. Make that memory of them enlighten their heart and ease their pain to say, someone cared. The important thing is to say, I really care for how your family was while I knew them. I really paid attention to the things that we got to do together, whether it be the clerk at Ben Franklin and now you know that she passed away. Share that memory and say, I enjoyed going to Cortez's taco shop and getting my favorite taco, or I enjoyed this and that, so that they will feel that you really did know them and that you also will miss them.
Well, I love that you have the strength to participate in those types of events when people were very vulnerable. And because I really, regardless of how, the last funeral I went to was my brother's, right? And your heart broke. you have feelings of anxiety and sadness. And for me to see you there gives me comfort. And I think that the personality that you have and the person that you are, I can't imagine that doesn't do that for other people. That when they're emotionally torn, to have I'm not even saying anybody else. I'm saying you specifically there, I think brings comfort to people, because I think regardless of what level that interaction of people that have had with you, it's I would venture to say the majority been extremely positive. And to be in a position where you're going through such an emotional event, to see your smile, to hear your words, and to just have your presence, it's comforting. And I can't help but say, in my opinion, you're a godsend to a lot of people, to a lot of us, because you've always been there in some form or fashion for most people, and it's always been positive. So that's one thing in particular that I love about you. And doing this podcast, I was super excited because you're that person. When people think about events and things, they think about you because you're always a part of them. And I love it.
Thank you so much. And another thing on that subject matter, you have to prepare yourself to what you want to say and what you need to feel when you are there. When I'm at the funeral home, I consider myself a funeral hostess. So if I see that the family is a quiet family, and just sometimes holding their hands and hugging them is just enough, because they can feel your heartbeat and two hearts will beat together. Now, I have been approached, needless to say, to be a spontaneous, my cousin, he was going to give the eulogy at the funeral, but he didn't make it. Could you? So I'll just go into my little office there in my desk and quickly write something and remember my thoughts, and then offer extended prayers to them. So sometimes something very simple, something to the point, and to get a good message across is good, and showing them that you care for them as much as God will care for them in this life after. And Mr. Galloway and I, we have a good rapport with that, because we share our concerns. And the funeral home in GWISD does a super job of making sure that emotional needs are met and everything that involves a funeral. So that is special already, knowing that you have a purpose there. So thank you so much. Besides working at the funeral home, I also work at the school in Three Rivers. I'm a cafeteria lady.
Okay.
Every Friday, it's called Manners Celebration. If they say good manners, I ring my blue longhorn bell, and they love it.
Wait, you ring a blue longhorn bell in Three Rivers?
That's okay. They love it. As long as
I love it.
The kids continue to say, please, thank you, and so glad you're here. Also, on Fridays with my pre-K and kinders, it's called Rock and Roll Friday. There, we cheer for the Bulldogs, and we have a good time. We teach each other how to cheer, and the first thing we say is, what day is it today? Rock and Roll Friday. So the teachers kind of like it, because I say, I'm giving them a private lesson on how to use their social media skills and how to talk in front of crowds and not be afraid to really say it. Yeah. Of course, I'm an adult cheerleader also.
Sure.
I cannot be in a game without me yelling. And when they ask who I am, I always say, oh, that's my son over there. They go, oh, what number is he? Oh, he doesn't wear a number. Oh, he doesn't? No, he's the coach. Okay.
So that makes you everybody's mother when you're the coach's mom.
That makes me everybody's mother. But growing up in GWISD, we had that. And I know that we take time to share. I like to be the mother of the child who the mother can't come.
Sure.
I will volunteer at the concession stand. I will introduce at pep rallies. We will make up pep rallies. We will have a good time. I remember many good times, of the kids yelling and saying, come on, Miss Alvarez, come on, let's do 2-bits. So I think that when you establish that camaraderie and that friendship with the crowd, and that you can get up and do that, you're leaving a legacy.
Sure.
Like you said, what do you want your grandchildren to know about you? I want them to know Mamo would see a microphone or a megaphone, which I have 2, a Longhorn one and a Kennedy one. I don't have a Three Rivers one yet because they haven't given me one. That's my paycheck red. But I think it's important that we establish a camaraderie as much as you want to. If you're not a cheerleader, well, then don't be one.
Yeah.
If you can't be a funeral hostess, then don't be one. But find your talents, dig deep inside, and take care of it. I do enjoy everything I do. Let's talk about StoryFest. We started that when my dad, Ramiro Garcia, and Beto Lopez were 2 of the main storytellers.
Oh,
How
really?
did I get involved? They needed someone to introduce them, and I did not hesitate to raise my hand.
So then you've had this kind of in your family then?
Always in my family.
Because, George West, for people that don't know, and there's going to be a lot of people that don't know, George West is a town of a lot of wallflowers. To sort of have somebody who's outgoing, who is Mackey Alvarez, is very rare, but it sounds like it may have run in your family.
It did, and I think we learned that I did from my dad, who always said, never miss out, mija, on an opportunity. Get up and say what you want to say. Don't let anybody tell you, no, you can't talk about that. And that's because we like that. I like that. My dad liked that. Too, we were well known throughout the community of George West for the T&T Cafe.
Yes.
On 705 Brazos Street, right across the railroad tracks. We really enjoyed that. So
Let me tell you something. My family was your competitor, but y'all had better chicken fried steaks, hands down. So when Lee Alanis hears this, they had better chicken fried steaks, Lee. I'm sure he's going to agree.
Well, both of the Alanis family and my dad's family, we were good friends. We helped each other out. If Anselmo or Esteban or anybody needed anything, we helped each other. If Dad needed anything, we helped each other. You always, want to share things. But back in the day when Bob Reagan was the sheriff, the restaurants fed the prisoners.
Oh, really?
They did not have to have a kitchen. So we were able to use our food business to go to the jail, right there, the original jail. And Bob Reagan would say, okay, you brought 2 meals. At first, it was just 2 meals, breakfast and 5 o'clock lunch. And the pay for that plate was $1 a plate.
Wow.
So if you had 10 prisoners, you had made $10 for breakfast and $10 for the afternoon. Now, if my dad couldn't do it on Saturday and Sunday, guess who he called? The people that were the competitors. And Anselmo and Esteban would come in, and you just took your little lunches on those 10 little pie plates. Or we didn't have all that to-go stuff back then. It was very original. And it didn't have to have anything fancy. Rice, beans, Spam, carne picada with papas.
I just got super mouthwatery.
Yeah, fun things like that, and they wouldn't complain. And the county was very receptive to the fact that, the prisoners were getting treated right. Now, there were some families that expected you to, take them a hamburger and stuff, but you couldn't do that unless you got permission from someone. And there was some very influential people that tried to say, hey, he's going to be there for a long time. Here's some money, so can you once in a while take him a hamburger? And my dad kind of got the idea and said, well, if I take him a hamburger, let's take everybody a hamburger.
Yeah.
So that way it would be fair. And it worked out well. Again, I think the compassionate and the care from the El Comedor and the T&T to take care of the community needs and not get rich on it, but get rich in friendships and camaraderies and meet people that you would have never met again. The interesting thing about feeding prisoners is I don't know if you recall Henry Lee Lucas.
Yeah.
Okay, they were going to take him down the railroad tracks he was going to show him of some bodies that he had buried.
Kind of like on the southeast side of town, right? When you're heading like towards Beeville.
Towards Beeville. So he was dressed in white, and he was handcuffed to the deputies. And Sheriff Busby, who was a deputy then, because he worked under Sam Huff, came and said, you know what, Mackey and Ramiro, everyone is not going to get silverware because we can't have any knives. So they were eating something
so at
soft.
the time y'all did take silverware in.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, not to the jail. They brought him to eat at the restaurant because they were the train was going to come pick him up and take him down the place where he said there was some things that they needed to know. Everyone got a nice lunch. Henry Lee got a ham sandwich, and everything was plastic. He got, he didn't need one. Because remember, they said that he had a photographic memory. Mm-hmm. So they said, keep the conversation short. Don't put anything out there that you don't have to, because he has photographic memory. So my dad is like, puro mexicano, like, oh, mira, that's him. But no parece. Doesn't look like he killed that many people. And we go, Dad, you are not an expert on that.
So you saw him too then?
Yeah.
Okay.
He was interesting. He would chew gum on the side of his mouth, and he did give you that look like, hey, nice place you got here. And then I would
I would imagine some of those guys at some point, they know who they are and they know that everybody's watching them. And you almost get sort of like a celebrity status, So I could see him being a little out there and maybe a little show-off-ish. So that's interesting.
The TNT was started in 1962 when I was in the 4th grade. My dad had an opportunity to buy it from some people that were in the oil field business and no longer wanted to do that. Now, what did my dad know about restaurants? Not much. He had worked for Gus and Ethel Hoodman at the Western Auto and was a tire man, very successful in his trade also. But he just figured, well, I can do this. He took it on the, he recapped all his ideas and he said, Gladys, if you and Mr. Tom Thomas will help me establish the menus and teach me, I'll buy it from you. With the financial help of Gus and Ethel Hoodman and Ike, who were, just my dad's best friends, my dad plunged into the restaurant. So the community wanted to change the name. And Dad said no. It was an oil field town, and this would be the perfect opportunity to leave it then, from 1962 to 1998.
So when he bought it, it was TNT.
TNT, and we never changed it.
Okay,
and there's not an and to it. There's a T period T.
Oh, so, okay.
Cafe. So he expounded on that and became successful and loved what he did and employed everybody that needed a job. We've had so many people come back and say, I got my first job there. And I was so scared, but I loved it when we would make $200 or $300 in tips on hunting nights. And it was very, very comforting to know that you could employ people and let them become somebody on that field of...
Sure.
With no education and whatever. So that worked out well. So in 1998, we did not continue it. My parents had passed on and we didn't want to. The kids were getting older. My 5 children and I, we wanted to do things for each other and go to football games and not worry about it. So we didn't. But we had a good upbringing in the restaurant. The kids all got to work. They didn't like to work during the fair. Mm-hmm. The boys would hire other people to come work for them during the fair. My girls did not like to waitress because they said it was too hard, but they did like the money. So they had a good opportunity, dishwashing, cooking. Sean Ray and Ruben took an interest in it, and we enjoyed it for as much as we could.
So out of all the kids, who was the most help?
Sean Ray and Ruben.
Okay.
And Carla filled in for me. But
she was third, though, right?
Yeah. Only, I think she kind of gave me that excuse, like, if you're in the hospital or if you're having a baby, then I will come and work with you.
So then you went and had a baby.
We kind of did that, but then we wanted them to be involved in school, and they were academically involved and involved in all the sports activities. So we wanted to continue that with them. Now, going back to the restaurant when I was first growing up in the 65, 66, 67, 68, it was interesting because it was booming with U.S. Steel. So that brought a lot. And then we were able to get the validation of the TNT is the same as it was before.
Yeah.
But before that, when I was 9 or 10 years old, we kind of volunteered for stuff at school. And we had a student come in, like a foreign exchange student who did not speak English, just Spanish. So they said, you girls, who wants to volunteer? And I raised my hand. They go, okay, you will help this student with reading. And then my two cousins, they helped with math and everything else. So we were taken out of the 3rd grade.
Oh, wow.
And we went to the classroom with our special friend, new student.
Y'all were young then.
Yes, and I still haven't received my paycheck. And I'm not on the retirement fund either. But that's where we learned to help one another. It really was important to me because I look back now and I say, this student was given the best opportunity because we were there for her when she needed us, and her parents and her family were so excited.
Yeah.
And she became successful, and we always look forward to that when we have class reunions. I know Glennis Strauss always says, I feel so bad for y'all because I missed y'all in 3rd grade. But then we continued in high school. I was not an athletic person. I was not a cheerleader, believe it or not. I played drums in the band, and I loved it. I loved it. I loved my band director.
Did Ruben play drums?
Ruben played trombone.
Oh, trombone. Okay.
Sean Ray played trumpet, and Jason played saxophone. Carla played flute.
What?
And Melissa played the trumpet, too.
Okay.
But the ones that stuck to the band were Sean Ray and Ruben. Jason, he really didn't get along with other people telling him what to do. So let's just leave it at that. And Carla made a decision to continue with her sports and her academics, which was excellent. We really enjoyed that. Through the years, I still, volunteered all my services. And then StoryFest came. And then we said, holy cow, this is great. There was a meeting with a few of the community members under the direction of Rob Schneider, who wanted to bring a festival to George West. It was in 1995, I believe.
Yeah.
1995. We met at the house of Betty Smith, who we were just so excited. Rob Schneider was a new lawyer in town. That was her nephew. We met. We said, okay, we can do this. What will it be? No fancy names. By now they knew my personality, that I'm going to tell them what I thought would be right. So I said, let's keep it simple, something that people will remember. George West StoryFest. Sold. Took on. Okay, we need volunteers. Sold. We all volunteered. And then you got a job as a stage manager, which I loved. And then we had my dad telling stories of how he came to George West from Mexico at the age of 12.
Oh, wow.
Went to school in Robstown as they traveled on foot and stopped at ranches to earn their keep and earn food and earn shelter. They wound up at the Line Ranch, which is on Freer 59. But then his parents had relatives in the Robstown area, so they moved to Robstown. So imagine this. My dad is short and real dark. And he goes to Robstown. He doesn't like it there. They put him in school. He's 12. And in those days, you had a contained class like you probably had first through third in one class. Coffee and sardines were for breakfast.
Coffee?
And sardines.
Ooh.
So he said, no, he told his parents, I don't want to go to school anymore, and I don't like it here. At that time, his parents said, well, there's opportunities for us to go to George West. So that's why they came to George West, and they worked and they found more work. Two sisters of his also came to George West, and They all married, and it's funny because my father was an only brother to his two sisters. Now, we are kin to every chapa in the United States of America because my...
Armando Chapa calling you out.
Yes, which I love them. We are a good, strong, close-knit family because my mom's brother married my dad's sister.
Hang on. Okay.
Okay? No, we didn't commit anything wrong. You know, it's
I just had to run it through real quick.
Yeah, you just like just fun stuff, and that was fine. She married a chapa, and my mother was a chapa, and my mother married my dad, and that was great. And then my dad's older sister married a third or fourth cousin to my mom. So she married Lucio Chapa, not Johnny's father, but another Lucio. So that was very interesting that someone would come and say, "Are you kin to Chapa?" Well, don't even look up the lineage. Just say yes. Yes, yes, yes.
It's more of a family poll.
Yes.
Okay.
And sometimes they weren't even related to us. It could be sixth or seventh or eighth or ninth cousin, but we consider that because that's how we grew up. You know how you have older relatives, pues tío y tía, and they go, "They're not your tío and tía," but out of respect, they are our tía and tío. So my dad we stayed in George West. He worked at the Western Auto. He owned the TNT. He babysat. Friday, 2:35, 2:45, we're ready for the football game. Ready for anybody's football game. He made every football game for Ruben and Sean Ray and Jason, as they all three got to play together, as you know. And we made some interesting trips with my dad.
That's interesting of him to, at that time, to be able to have, I guess, the courage to take on a restaurant. I mean, when you've got a family and, there's not a whole lot of people with a whole lot of money in George West, especially back at that time, to be able to say, "Hey, I'm going to take a chance," and maybe with some help with some other people, but to go, I have children that I need to take care of, but I'm still going to try and make this work, because if it does, it'll be better for my children. I'll be able to provide a better life for them than if I just keep doing the thing that I'm doing. We all get super comfortable in what we have going on that we don't really take advantage of opportunities when they come, because we're so comfortable in what we're in already. So at that time to be able to have the courage to say, "You know what, I'm gonna give this a shot," and to do it for as long as he did, that's awesome. I mean, from what I get from you, he had a huge personality and a lot of confidence in himself. And that's important. That's something that not enough people have. I tell everybody, for being fat and unattractive, I have way too much self-esteem, So to hear other people that have a lot of courage in them and enough self-esteem to go, "You know what, I can make this happen." I talked to Bojan years ago, and we had talked about, I think when times were getting tough, back in 2008 when things were slowing down, and I always had this mentality that regardless of, regardless of anything that we do, we'll be successful. We may struggle, but we don't have the mentality of not making it, regardless of what it is. So having that mentality has kind of given me, I still get comfortable in my job and say, I'm just going to chill out here. But at the same time, I always say, well, if anything ever happened, I'd go get another job. And I'd figure it out, and I'd learn it. And much like your dad, he has 0 restaurant experience. But you know what? I'm a reasonably smart guy. I'll figure it out, and we'll make it happen. I love hearing that that's exactly how it was, because it comes out in you. A lot of times you sit there and you go, how is Mackey, this beacon? How is she so bright? It's got to come from somewhere, and it sounds like he played a role in that, a big role in that.
And it takes commitment and dedication, and like you said, thinking it out, not just plunging into it like craziness. I know that we had the restaurants for everybody. We're so successful, and it wasn't a competition. It's how can we help each other? I mean, we bought donuts from the El Comedor and sold them at the TNT.
Yeah.
We bought pies from Ferguson's restaurant and sold them at the TNT.
If you waited at 4 o'clock in the morning, they were fixing to throw them out. So that's when we would go and buy them.
And people transitioned from working at the El Comedor and they would go work at Ferguson's, or they'd come work with us or their family. And we didn't argue or like, nombre, we kind of shared the love of having that companionship in business. If there would have been a chamber of commerce, they would have been the leaders of the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce.
Sure.
We lived in the barrio. The Alanises lived here and there. And we stayed in the barrio because we wanted to until 1970. We moved to 400 Burleson. Being in the restaurant business, I was the only one really involved because my brothers and sisters had already gone off. And so, but that ability to help their finances and help get my older siblings in school and to travel and to give them the opportunities that Dad wanted to have. Because my dad had 6 children from a previous marriage, they were much older than me, but he still helped in any way that he could to all of them. Yeah. So I was still considered the baby. My mom, Lina Chapa Garcia, was a stay-at-home mom. She had no business being anywhere else other than at the TNT. She was the hostess. Yeah. That's where I get it from.
Oh, okay.
And we made sure we had a jukebox that would play tunes for everyone to enjoy. Back in the day, you had a jukebox, and the jukebox people that rented you the jukeboxes, Wayne Hitt, who was a sheriff in Sinton, they'd give you $10 worth of red quarters so that when things got kind of low that you didn't want to hear the after 5 o'clock drinkers and to take their stresses out and hear all those bad words or talk about somebody, you'd take that red quarter and punch in any song that you wanted to. That's where I told Bob Strauss when he was very little that his family was eating. I said, I'm going to play you a song. Put a quarter in and I said, little Bob, Johnny Cash is in there. And he probably had a great imagination there. Looked through that little slot where the quarter went and said, I see him, Miss Mackey. I see him. So now that I see Bob as a grown and successful person helping his community and advocating for all of the issues that he loves to do, sure. I said, you really got started because I told you Johnny Cash was in that jukebox. So we laugh about it, but we have good memories.
Yeah.
We can still walk or go somewhere and they say, didn't you, the TNT? And I go, yeah, chicken fried steak, guacamole nachos, da-da-da-da-da. They go down the list of the menu, and we love it. It's like, oh, this is great. One of the most important things that my husband and I learned as being the owners after my dad decided not to, and we bought it from him, was that number one rule of thumb in the Alvarez household, we cannot work together. We had different opinions. We just decided that we should never work together in anywhere. So, but we still made it successful. Sean still magistrated and was the perfect cook and taught the boys well. But no one can make that brown gravy as good as my husband does. So it's he said the secret is deep down in his heart.
He said, I sweat in it a lot.
We thank Alfredo Bernal and my dad for committing to it's got to be perfect and it's got to be perfect, and we did. So we enjoyed
that's taking pride in it. Yeah, that's absolutely. That's taking pride in what you're doing.
It's really great. And like, again, during Storyfest, we were very successful in Storyfest.
Well, let me ask you this real quick before we go to Storyfest. What was your go-to song in that jukebox?
It was Ring of Fire, B5 by Johnny Cash.
Nice. That's a good one.
Because I liked it. It would get the old cowboys, Charles Cecil Campbell, who was, he worked for the West Wards, and they would walk in with their spurs. Talbert Holland, who had lost a limb in the army, and he was kin to all the Hollands, and they would review their business days like, well, I got 600 cattle, and things that we didn't know about. The city secretary that would come in and say, yes, I'll have a 5 o'clock drink, but pour it in a glass. My chemistry teacher who would come in at night, Mr. Rockstead, and say, we'll have 2 of the usuals. I knew what the 2 of the usuals were. So, little things like that, watching the Huberts grow up at the TNT and leaving big tips to the waitresses that put up with the shenanigans of 4 ramping, raging young boys, watching the business people of the community come, watching after the game football cheerleaders and football teams. We fed a lot of schools after the games. I recall one story that Sean Ray told me. He goes, I hate to play with Stoso because when we're in the lineup, they go like, and we're going to go eat at your restaurant, and they make ugly food. And Sean Ray said, they just fueled our energy. And we always had to feed Freer, Texas. Coach from Freer said, our community is in the middle of nowhere, Miss Alvarez.
Yeah.
And we can't take the kids anywhere where we're going to feed them. So we fed them for as long as Sean Ray and Ruben and Jason were in school. Softball, baseball, track meets, we had to go deliver hamburgers because they would tell you, we can only pay this much. That's fine. We're not here to get rich. We're just here to make sure that you come back next year.
Yeah.
So that was the type of philosophy that we had, and we enjoyed it.
Freer, people don't understand. We played a lot of softball tournaments through Dad's Girls in Freer, and the only thing in Freer is dirt and rattlesnakes. There's not a whole lot more.
It's come up a little bit,
yeah.
But there's still people that say, there used to be a restaurant that my grandpa said they used to come when we played, and I said, yes, when you're in the business of meeting people, you've got to share that opportunity. But Storyfest was good to us. Storyfest was good. We
still
fed
goes
the
on,
bands.
right?
No. Because a director found time of being with family, we kind of stopped that. But we've kind of done the Dobie Dichos, which they go to the old Live Oak County jail, and some of the storytellers come back. And for the past 2 or 3 years, we've used the GWISD Theater to highlight people of the community to come and still tell their family stories like you and I are doing right now.
Wow.
So I participated in that, and you can tell a lot of secrets and tell the dirt on everybody, and she's not going to kick you out of town, and that goes well. So we're trying to keep that going with the Dobie Dichos and come back, and renovations have taken place. Thank you to Valero and Conoco Phillips for always providing the budget money that is needed to keep that up. Of course.
I love that it's opened back up. I know you don't know this, but I don't like to toot my own horn, but I'm fixing to. You are talking to 1998 Best Supporting Actor at B County College. So I'm just throwing that out there. So when I saw that the Dobie was opening, at first I was like, I didn't even know there was a theater there. And then later on, because the only thing on that strip, all I knew was Mr. Ponce's barbershop. And so seeing that open, it was like, that's awesome. I think me, Mom, and maybe Dad had gone to a concert there one time a long time ago. And I love that you guys are involved in that place.
It's to the successes of the people that wanted to revitalize it. Marianne Pavlik, who got our grants, and the county judges who really worked hard at promoting it. And then it was highlighted at Storyfest during Ghost Stories. They would hold the ghost stories there, and then people started seeing how there's other theaters like in Shiner and in Cuero and other little towns that we took up volunteer people, artists that painted the walls, and then we called on donation sponsorships to promote the gold stars and the wonderful things that the money goes into the theater, but you walk in there and you're taken back.
Sure.
When I was in first grade, we would always make sure that in Christmas time we wore white shirts or white shoes, because we walked from the primary to the theater to see a Western movie, The Lone Ranger or Zorro. Why the white shoes and the white shirt? So that we could see each other like, oh, I see your feet, or I see you. That was just something that I thought. But stories have it. My father, and probably your father and your other family members, would tell that when the theater man that originally owned it. I don't know his name. It was very successful. On Sundays, había the Hispanic movies. We would all go to that. You would take your lunch, your tacos. No one asked you for your taco then. They'll ask you for your taco now, but they didn't ask you for your tacos then. And it was a thriving movie theater. You'd still have the little box office on the outside. Stories have it, known to be true, that Bonnie and Clyde pit stopped there.
Oh, really?
Caught a movie and went on to... They didn't rob the theater because I guess they thought, no, there's no money in here. So they were on there coming back from Bishop, I believe the story. I may be off a little bit, but it's very interesting.
That is very
interesting. As it was refurnished and everything, we tried to keep some of the presentation and the walls. There are still some things that take you back because I was there.
I love that y'all kept it like that. I mean, it's as original as possible.
It's really good. And now... Storyfest introduced that to the community and it continued to be a highlight of that, and it really worked well with the directorship of the board of directors under the direction of like Glennis Holmes Strauss and all the wonderful people that work with her. They were able to start concerts in there. Like you said, I think Patsy Torres has come and Dion Pride and so many.
She's still pretty. She was pretty when we were kids.
Remember the
Sixth grade little.
Yeah, she came in the gym or the theater room.
Well, we went to the Coliseum for
one too.
Take away drugs or
yes, I remember
Red Ribbon Week. It was exciting to see that. But people like that like to come back. It is, I'm going to really speak my heart out and not hurt anybody's feelings, but when there are community events such as that, I want to make sure everyone knows that it's for you too.
Yeah.
$30 a ticket, $20 a ticket, it's okay. It's for the future. Like you said, what do you want your kids to know? Hey, I went to a concert there with my grandma and my grandpa. It's good. It's good storytelling. So Glennis comes up with the idea. Storyfest is thriving and whatever. And Glennis, being the go-getter that she is and the hard worker, we incorporate the GWISD Performing Arts Theater people.
Has it always been the Dobie Theater? Or was it named something different back then?
It was just the theater.
Okay.
But the GWISD is because of the Dobie. Yeah, well, the Dobie family that has a lot of history in there, and through grants and the Dobie county businesses, the big J. Frank Dobie, the author, and the wonderful things that he does. And there's a big highlight of his story and his historical contributions to the community. So we thought that would honor, the family members or the ancestors that are living. And it has a nice ring.
Yeah.
GWISD Theater, GWISD Dichos. So we did, our first play that we did, I can recall, was Our Town. It was so
Was
much
that
fun.
the one you did recently?
No, the one that we did recently was the one about the trailer houses, the Christmas. I don't even know. I've been in so many. I think I have been in all of them except
Couple maybe.
a couple. But my favorite one was, all of them are my favorite because it's really difficult to say, oh, I like this one. But the one where I played the different parts, where I was the Russian and the this and that, I had to learn that. Glennis said, now where are you going to learn a Russian accent? So I watched Rocky, where he boxes.
The Russian?
Where she comes out and I go, and then I worked at it real hard. But we've done lots of serious ones and lots of funny ones and lots of crazy ones. We did Reader's Theater. We did one, the dress, the shoes I wore, or whatever, where you didn't have to memorize your part. You could read it. But we still memorize it.
You know what's interesting is when you were talking earlier about the people that came into the restaurant, and you're describing the different types of people, and you're describing and you're passionate about each person that you're describing, and I'm watching you do this. In my mind, I'm saying she's studying. she's not just being a greeter. She's not just inviting people in the restaurant for a meal. She's studying different personalities and types of people. And I can see you taking those and keeping them in your memory bank for when you do perform. And you can reach in and go, you know what, I'm going to take a little bit of this person. I'm going to take a little bit of that person. Because I can see that in you. And when you're talking about it, and I wish this was more video than anything else, because you can see your mind going, I took this person years ago and I put them in there, and your body language changes, your facial feature changes, your voice changes. And I'm like, this is where she got it from.
Of course. And I think that was all with my dad, too, who inspired us. Now, I am 69, and my parents were already a little bit older when they had me. So they wanted to make sure that I used every opportunity to have good opportunities to become who I am. Talking at funerals, you know, my dad had a historical life. He back in the day, if you wanted to marry your wife, you just didn't go and say, I'm here and I'm going to marry your daughter. You had to have like a sponsor.
Oh.
Un padrino. So guess who was the sponsor in GWISD? My dad.
Oh, wow.
Pablo and Sophie Bernal, Paul Bernal, always say, oh, when your dad came to ask for my hand in marriage with Paul, I was so honored. I felt so privileged that your dad gave a great presentation, and all Mr. Bernal had to do was just sit there and wink and look good and kind of hold his shoulders up high, and my dad did all the talking. So that is something so important that needs to be carried on. So remember that when your son or daughter comes home and says, Dad, he's proposed to me, and look at my engagement ring. Ay, mija, qué hermoso. Now, when are your parents and the padrino coming to ask for your hand? Because you kind of set the bench, you know, you sit together and you kind of look at each other, and another person is telling your story to this family. Now, if the family, from what my dad would say, because I had a project in school and I had to take my dad to explain this because I needed to get points in homemaking for this, and he gave a good presentation at the cafeteria that was the old weight room for y'all, and people were like, I didn't know people did that. Yes, they did do that. In hanging around with Veto Lopez too, I learned a lot of things about how you needed to respect your elders and how you made a business proposition and how you did a lot of things. And then people look at you and kind of say, you know, I haven't heard about that from a long time.
Yeah.
Because my mother was raised in Anna Rose, because we are biracial. We are the Weston McCampbell family,
Okay.
which made headlines as there was the presentation of slaves, and our story hit the newspapers, and we got to meet a lot of our family, and that makes me so proud.
So through the article in the paper, you were able to meet.
Yes, because it brought us out. You know, I knew that we were. My grandmother was half black, and we enjoyed that. She owned the famous Anna Rose Dance Hall, which I did not sing there or MC there. I just made sure I kicked a lot of dirt up in the air.
It's crazy because, like, I know where Anna Rose is, but currently there's nothing in Anna Rose.
No, the dance hall was after my grandfather passed away, Romano Chapa, and my grandmother had already passed away. I did not meet my grandmother, Regina Weston Chapa. I met some of my grandmother's aunts afterwards, because my grandmother passed away first, which we called Pinky. And she left a legacy in GWISD. I remember hearing stories about her that they said she really rocked that ranch, because being a McCampbell, they were given that property. It's a long history story. That would be another subject that we don't want to get into. But I remember a funny story. One of my children, and you're going to have to guess who it was, went and said,
I already know.
You know, I'm black. And the coach said, you're right. You can't even run. You are so slow. And his response was, but I can dance.
So where are your other relatives residing? Where do they live?
We have some here, and my mother's cousins. We're spread all over. We still have Western lineage in the Live Oak County, because anybody who's assigned is related to us, and our grandmothers were sisters, so we take that with such pride. The Anna Rose Cemetery, which is not going to be in the future done due to so many things that have to be done, we're going to make that a historical marker. Okay. So it's an interesting thing. Cemeteries are interesting to go to. You learn a lot of history from there. My grandmother had herself and 3 sisters and 1 brother. Norwick Weston. What an interesting name.
That is very interesting.
Norwick Weston. So it's good. And people said your grandmother was a great businesswoman. The Anna Rose Dance Hall was a big success. It was a big success. Friday nights with big name bands, puro conjunto, Brown Power, Brown Soul, anybody that wanted to be somebody would be there. So it's interesting to know that, you need to know who you are and
Sure.
where you came from. And dig deep. And
you know what's wonderful is, like, you're telling these stories and talking about the marker, and in the grand scheme of things, it's not that long ago. We look back and go, "Oh, it's Carla's great grandmother," But when you think about it, that's 3 people ago. It wasn't that long ago. There's so much interesting history and so many things that are there, and we go, "Oh, that was nothing's in Anna Rose now." But it wasn't that long ago. It's very interesting. I'll tell you an interesting story. I probably can say it because my father-in-law won't listen to this. But he's black. His dad was white. His mom was black. And he remembered growing up on a farm. And there was a white man on a tractor that would always pick him up and take him for a ride. And he never knew who he was. He found out later on that must have been his dad. Funny story, though, he almost got court-martialed when he went to the Army because he told them who his dad was, and it turned out that was not his dad. It was the gentleman that owned the farm. And so he almost got court-martialed for that.
and that's why the article that came out in the Corpus Christi Caller made a big stand, because it was slaves in America, or slave. It was during Black History Month. Mm-hmm. And the story is that, okay, my grandmother's mother, Zella, was already in the States. And obviously she was the daughter of a McCampbell, a white prominent person. And I may have a few things wrong because I have to go look at my notes that I have at home. And through that, Mr. McCampbell, she was a housekeeper or a slave for him, wanted her to have the best of everything. So, I'm real dramatic. I want to make a story, a novel, and I want to play Zella. He wanted her to have the best. So he did. He recruited someone to come from the Mississippi, New Orleans. There's so many stories where I have a cousin in Florida who really does good research, and other cousins that are doing good research, wanted her to marry somebody. And he did. He found Colonel Tom Weston. The war was over. This was in the 1800s, 1860s. And he recruited him over here. And he married her, and then...
For the purpose of marrying her. Okay.
And for the purpose of giving her something to look forward to. And then they had children. There's some missing dates there as to where were they between that time and the time Anna Rose got established. On his deathbed, he called for Tom Weston to come and see him. And that's when he deeded him a paper and said, all of these acres are yours. Do what you can, provide for your family, for your daughters. And they each got 46.7 acres of land. Everybody came to get a ranch. Everybody married. My grandmother married Romano Chapa, who was from San Diego, Texas, Mendieta, those little communities. Mm-hmm. And then my other aunts married this one, and my other aunt's married that one, and my other aunt married someone in San Antonio. So when we had a reunion, I'd say about 20 years ago, and this article came out, the editor and reporter of the newspaper went and did some coverage. And I don't think the Corpus Christi Caller was very happy with her reporting, because it brought in the McCampbells, who were very influential in the Corpus Christi area. And I think that some of their extended families, or the heirs of them, were not very happy with how it was portrayed. I didn't look at it as something ugly. I looked at it as something proud and meaningful to my family.
Well, it sounds that way. Like, that's how I take it. You know, from what you're telling me, I get the vision of somebody that really cared about somebody, that they wanted them to be able to have a life, the best life that they could, you know, and regardless of maybe, you know, you can sit there, you know, we always try and judge a scenario years later, you know, what is hindsight's 20/20 kind of thing, and go, well, maybe something could have been done a little different, or if he really would. But at the time when these people were living in those moments and they're making decisions in those moments, you know, it seemed like it was something that he was doing because he really cared about this person and was trying to get her to have the best life that he could under whatever circumstances they were living in. So it's interesting.
I think the question and his concern was, and the unknown is, was Zella the daughter of William McCampbell, who had a mansion? And I'm going like, oh my God, this
makes
is
you wonder.
Dallas. This is Dynasty. This is the young and the restless. How exciting. That's how I looked at it.
Well, you know, when you were telling me initially, my first thought is, why is this man so interested in the benefit of this person? You know, okay, maybe he cares a lot about her, but that's a lot of effort. You know, that's a lot of work to do for somebody that you just care about. So it makes you wonder. It makes you wonder if there's more to it. And you know, when you really cut through it all, you go, it's probably pretty simple to figure out, you know? And so that's super interesting. I you know, in my family, and I always kind of joke with people, but it's like, we know our immediate family, and that's about it. You know, people ask, well, what about your dad's family? They're onion heads from Mathis. That's all I know. But to hear this story, it's super interesting. It's very Dallas and Dynasty.
Bold and the beautiful.
Yes.
But you take it in stride because you want to be respectful and you want to know your history. You want to know. I want my kids to know.
Sure.
You know, I love it when we go to family reunions and funerals, and I'll have the older aunts and uncles, even though they're your cousins, you still call them tia y tío. I don't know. I love that. But when they look at you and they go, ay, mija, este muchacho looks just like Uncle Norwick, you know, or nombre, you have beautiful children, or they say, oh, you act and look just like your mom. Your mom was different. My mom was raised in Anna Rose, and she had brothers and sisters, and my mom was very chiflada. She didn't have to work like my other mother's sisters did. I have an aunt who, you know, ran Anna Rose while my grandmother had passed away, and she was responsible caregiving for her father, Romano. But she took him everywhere. They did business deals, and I remember talking to John Thomas Lang, the business of how they did business with Grandma Pinky and Anna Rose was like, you get there at 4:00 in the morning, and we'll negotiate how we're going to cultivate this field or how we're going to plow that field. 4:01. You're late. And so she would say, I'm not giving you the job. If she was satisfied with your appearance and your rapport of how you handled that interview with her, people would say, she would cross her leg, pick up that long skirt, reach in that boot that was tied around, you know, with the laces, take out a little flask and say, now we toast. Deal is done. Because she was proud of the fact. She was the instigator, the businesswoman, the dance manager of the salon. She wanted people to come and have a good time. Because there was another dance hall down the road, El Tocolote. Oh my God. And the Purple Sage. The Purple Sage was only for people de color. And I remember Mr. John Thomas Lyon would say, we went in there because we wanted to cut a rug with all of your cousins and aunts. And you know what they told us? Oh, no, this is just for us. You know, it's those windows that you would board up like at the concession stand and hold it with a chain. And they said, oh, man, our feet were just jigging and we were just watching your Uncle Norwick play the harmonica and do that. And it makes me proud to know that they saw it like that. They saw it as people, loving people and respecting people. At the bank, Ross Harris and Mr. Stroman Harris, Ross Harris's father, and all Margaret James, who was with the bank forever, would say, I loved when your Uncle Norwick came into the bank to put in his money or pay whatever he needed to pay on his loans. Because first thing he'd do is with those, imagine this, Gabe, khaki pants. Those little boots that we now pay hundreds of dollars for, a little belt, a little vest, your little hat, and then reach in there and pull out your harmonica and say, I'm going to sing a tune and play for you a little bit while you get my paperwork done. Where else could this happen? Because I think that showed respect and that showed a camaraderie that, you know, Margaret remembers it forever. You know, she remembers that. She said that was the highlight of the day when Norwick would come. I wanted to wait on him because he was going to play his harmonica. And those are the things that we look forward to. It wasn't the wealth or the finances or the successes or the unsuccesses of their life. It was how they lived their life to promote a better life for you.
You know what bothers me hearing all this? As I'm sitting here and I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, how did we get so boring? You know, is it technology? Is it ambition for more money? Is it trying to strive for status? I'm sure technology has a lot to do with it, but it's like these are all characters that are out of a movie. But this is how they lived. You know, people took care of themselves. You know, you see people going to Walmart in pajamas. You know, back then you did not leave the house if you were not dressed. You know, you wore a bow tie, you wore a tie, you wore a vest, you wore slacks, you wore dress shoes, you wore your hat. You know, you learned an instrument, you learned a craft, you were known for something. You know, and it kind of like tiny bit depresses me when I sit there and I go, we're so infatuated with history that we're not bothering making any. You know, we sit there and we go, I love hearing this. You know, I really do. And I sit there and go, what am I doing? What are we doing? You know, we're sitting here going, we're infatuated with these conversations and we're talking about how these people lived. And I sit there and I go, why aren't we living that way? You know, why aren't we dressing like this and learning a craft or learning an instrument or learning a trade, you know, and being, you know, Mr. Norwick? Why aren't we doing that? You know, sometimes I sit there and go, and I'm just as guilty of it. And I like to get lazy and I like to lay around the house and not learning anything new. And sometimes I'm like, well, you know, back then you had more time than you had money, you know, so you learned a craft, you learned something, you made yourself something, you know, and now we look back and go, man, I'm infatuated with that story, but I'm not doing anything myself to make my own history. You know, 50 years from now, 100 years from now, people are going to look back and go, what did you do? You know, you know.
But it's not too late. And I think it's the initiative that one takes to, you know, I was reading something the other day. I love to read. I'd love to read good books and sad books and books on how to improve. And no, there's not too many that you want to improve because you need to write your own book on how to improve. So they said, you know, there is going to come a time when we're not going to hear the stories. I know my Storyfest director, Mary Margaret Campbell, who taught so many kids, and her Doherty family was too a legacy of rodeo traditions, history. The Rob Schneiders of Live Oak County, the Smith family. Every last name that you go and look at, I'm sure there's the Molina last name, the Zuniga last name. all those people have a story, but like you said, you made one very important point. We haven't told that story.
Right.
We have, and I know that you said like, there's some people said, no, hombre, I can't go on me in a microphone. Olvídate. That's the same thing we had with Storyfest.
Yeah.
But did Beto Lopez and Ramiro Garcia shy away from that? No, because they saw the worth of it, the value of it. Beto worked for so many people and cooked. An interesting story about Beto is one time we came to Folk Life Festival.
Oh, really?
Beto was invited to Folk Life Festival because we had seen Dr. Hector Torres at Texas A&I Kingsville, and I was Beto's taxi, and I would take him to any festival, Lions Club or whatever. And Dr. Torres said, you need to take him to the Folk Life Festival in San Antonio. I will. They got us a room and everything. And he told us stories. We wore big mariachi hats, and he'd get an encore for his last performance was allá en el Rancho Grande. And I kind of added, that's where I got some stage persona, and he would sing allá en el Rancho Grande, and I'd say, ¿Dónde vivía la rancherita? And, people would applaud. They said, it's so good that you and your father do this. I said, he is like my father, but he's a very special historical man. So we're walking down the Henry B. Gonzalez thing before when they had Folk Life Festival, and Beto says, I'm tired. I said, yes, we need to go rest for the next performance. We had a room that had adjacent rooms, and he said, oh, yes, I need to rest. He said, but I need to call my son, Ernie. Okay, Beto. And then he would, you dial the phone operator. Well, she couldn't get through because I think there was a bad connection. And he got so pissed off because she couldn't make the call go through. I think Ernie, who was living in Freer, had a party line, and you know how those things go, and it was a disaster. There wasn't cell phones. He got so mad, he told her, you know what? I'm not going to listen to you. I know he's at home. I'm going to hang up right now. So he really hung up hard. And then he said, picked up a suitcase and vámonos. I said, Beto, we have a performance at 7:30. It's 5 o'clock. I need to make sure Ernie is okay. I said, okay. So I called the operator and I said, you need to really keep calling this number and have him call back. We're going to be here till 7. No, within a few 45 minutes, the phone rang, and it was Ernie. I'm fine. Ay, he was so relieved. Ay, hijo de mi vida, making the sign of the cross. Ay, qué bueno que estás bien. Dijo, I'm having a good time here and whatever. He just needed to hear the voice of the person he cared so much for.
Yeah.
And I told Ernie, oh my God, if we would have left at 5:30, Ernie, we would have been in a lot of trouble because we would have disappointed everybody. Mm-hmm. So people took the initiative. My dad loved to be a performer because he was a professional chauffeur for Douglas Rhodes.
Oh, really?
A tycoon, a very rich person of Live Oak County who owns the Rhodes Ranch. Mm-hmm. No one knew anything about him, but every June, my dad would get picked up in his car, and they would leave for a month. If he wanted to go fishing in San Francisco, California, they would go fishing.
Oh, really?
They wanted to go to a baseball game in Cincinnati, Ohio, watch whoever, they would go. If they wanted just to go to Oregon and fish for salmon or just see the sights, they would go.
That's awesome.
He had a personal relationship with him because my first job for my dad, his first job for Dad was working at the Texaco in downtown. We're now right across the street from the old handy stop. And that's where he met him. He said, I like you. My brother says that you're a good driver. You're hired. Tell your wife that we'll be leaving in June, around June the 5th, and we'll be back June the 30th. Or whenever we want to. Is that okay? And Dad would say, sure. Yeah, it's fine. Sure, I'm going. A little suitcase, a paper bag, and my dad's little hat. And then my dad would say, we had the best time of our lives. If he wanted to eat at a restaurant and it was too busy and they wouldn't seat us, he would say, we don't need to be here. We were on the Golden Gate Bridge, my dad said. And he didn't like the traffic. It was too long. We were going to be too late for the baseball game. He said, turn around. And my dad says, do you see the traffic and the lanes that we have to go through? He goes, that's why I hired you. You figure it out. So, my dad took a plunge to have an adventure, and I want to be like that too.
Well, that says a lot about your, even Ruben going to California. It's in the bloodline. To have the courage to say, I'm leaving my comfort zone and I'm going to go on an adventure. My family was a lot less like that, and I don't know if I don't know if it was a form of means. Dad's always been a very conservative kind of person. Hey, we need to work. We need to not. Fun was always last. Work was always first. The bills got to get paid. We were raised that way. Growing up with Ruben, I could tell something else was happening in that family. Because it spilled into Ruben. And so to be able to hear these kind of stories, it's so exciting, because most people, and even now we get around technology, Corona shoves people back into their rooms, and, virtual reality lets you interact without even leaving the house. And it's like, we're not living life. Sometimes you just gotta, throw caution to the wind and go get stuck in traffic on the Golden Gate Bridge,
But that's up to the individual.
Yeah.
And if that's not you and you want to be at home, that's okay too.
Right.
But then find something. Perhaps you can use your creativity to write or to take pictures. How many people are now professional photographers and come and see my photography company? That's an asset too. You just got to feel it.
Yeah.
That's what I say, and I'm going to give you an example of how to feel it. I went to see Melissa play softball in Victoria or somewhere, and they were playing, and they had a little broadcast like this right behind home plate. And Tamara, who at that time Elliot, came and said to me, "They don't have an announcer. Will you announce?" I said, "Well, I watch baseball and softball, but I don't know how to announce." She goes, "I'll tell you what to do." I said, "Do I have to do the little book where I fill in the diamonds?" She goes, "No." And it was a bunch of Polish names. And I said, "I need a roster, and I need to make sure I announce these names right. Because the worst thing you can do as an announcer is to mispronounce a name."
Sure. Especially when the parents are in the stands. Somebody's going to get upset.
So I said, "Bring me the assistant coach from the other team." It was Van Vleck that we were playing. And the man said, "Well, none of my people want to be." I said, "I'm not asking them to be with me. I need a pronunciation." So I had a tablet like this, and it was like Rospansky, or I knew how to say Korchinski and Wotosik. I was very good in Duwatzik. Sure. But there was some others, and I broke it down. And we did that. And so Tamara said, "Man, they like you." He said, we got beat. He said, "If you would go to the next game and announce." I even did the fifth inning stretch. "Okay, everybody, it's the fifth inning. Let's all get up. Greet your neighbor to the left and greet your neighbor to the right, and just give yourself a big hello." And they would go, "We love that you broke the ice,
Sure.
even though we beat y'all pretty bad, but that was okay." So I said, okay. And then I did do some Little League announcing. Many hats that I wore in George West were Storyfest MC, Little League president, Little League announcer, high school announcer, pageant coordinator, Live Oak County pageant. As I met Sarah here, I said, "Oh, I remember your routine to the Love Shack." She goes, "Oh my God. Why did
Sarah
I ever
probably
do?"
loved that.
So those are the things. I did the pageant for 10 years with great directors, Katie Hines and everything. And now it's not the same. We had talent. Things have broken down due to the availability of, again, the big V word,
Sure.
volunteerism. So
Yeah.
if you can volunteer and you don't want to get out of your comfort zone, take yourself to your primary class, elementary, junior high, high school. Just greet kids. Every kid likes for their name to be called out. "Hi, Gabe Molina, how are you today? Here's your class." "Hi, Carla Alviar, I came here to read you a story today. I'm Mrs. So-and-so." Those little things, 15 minutes, make a big impact
Sure.
on people. And that's what I like to do. Like my husband says, do you have to do everything? And the answer
At
is...
this point, you do.
I prepare myself. I say, no, husband of my life, the best husband. No, I don't have to. But here's the real reason. I want to.
Yeah.
Subject closed.
Yeah. Well, I think on that topic, I want you to tell everybody who might be listening to this, who might be a little bit of a wallflower. Give them your encouragement on how to... What is that song? Leanne Womack, where she says, is it Leanne Womack? Where she says, if you have an opportunity to sit around or dance, I hope you dance. So give everybody some advice on whether they should sit around or dance.
If you're within the listening voice of Mackey and Gabe here having a good podcast, look where we are now. Think of how, oh my God, I can't believe Gabe is on a podcast. Oh my God, I can't believe Miss Alvarez knows all the stories that she can tell and still remember. You can do it too, and it takes liking who you are. Do you have a lot to tell? Well, of course you do. You came into this earth to be somebody, so be that somebody. Don't think you have to impress for success. Do the little things that matter. Take hand in hand with your family members and say, come on, let's do this together. I'm going to show you how to do this. You don't have to have a degree, a specific talent. You can do lights at the theater. You can collect tickets at the softball game so that that person can be alleviated. You can clean the dugout after your Little League game and high five each little player how great they did. You can tell the coaches, y'all are awesome at the football field, even though you go to a football game like Weldon Cook, who doesn't have any children, and just congratulate the players and the coaches. You can enjoy yourself by telling people, I am positive about my life. How about those people that have had it real bad? No one's going to listen to me. I had a big drug problem. I was not a good student. I didn't finish high school, but I have a great job. Then that's the story that you need to tell. How about just loving yourself and like Gabe has impressed on me? How can I be a legacy to someone? How can my children know who I am? Make yourself known. Make yourself the person that values your own life. If you don't like yourself, come on, guys, resurface and love yourself. Look in the mirror and say, I am strong. I am confident. I am beautiful. I am a person of interest. You want to know how interesting I am? Let me tell you about it. It all involves a positive attitude. Have faith in yourself. Have faith in your family. Have faith in those who support you and those who knock you down. The ones that support you are going to be good for you. And the ones that knock you down are going to be even better for you, because you can build yourself up and say, hey, vato, I did it. Mira, aquí estoy in the Alamo Draft House playing a song, or here I am on a podcast. But don't let others tell you what you can and cannot do. You hear the sad stories of the teachers that tell the student, oh, you'll never be anything. I just can't believe you think you can be that. You can. And you can tell that teacher, thank you for putting that challenge in front of me. Thank you for believing in me, because just by you telling me that I couldn't, you challenged me. You know, it's hard, like you said, that we're not telling the stories and we're not doing this. I've realized through theater and through Storyfest and through any opportunity that I have, if you're not out there, then who is going to be out there for you? Take your family and look at them in the eye and encourage them. When your child comes back and says, I don't want to play baseball, I don't want to play football, I want to do UIL 1 act, don't say, oh no, that takes a lot of work. Say, you know what? Yeah, I support you. And then you learn from that. Before you know it, you're doing something great for your family and for yourself. Oh, I don't want to get up and go to school. When your child gets up and, like we say, we join the pajama party culture that we all think we have to dress in look-alike pajamas, right away correct that and say, no, let's be a little bit more respectful for who we are. You represent me. Because once they see that, who gets told, oh, mira, I can't believe Miss Alvarez let that child go to school like that. Make a change. Be good to yourself. Be very, very good. And I want to say one thing, and I know I feel it in your heart. Love your parents for as long as you can, for as good as they are, for as bad as they are. Forgive anybody before you're mad at them. Let them know why you're mad at them and forgive them. All of that interferes with your blessings. So get it out of your system and say, you know what? I hope you get some calls, Gabe. I hope lots of people say, you know what? I want to do the podcast. I have a better story than hers, vato. Oyes, comadre. I want to be on the podcast to show you how to make tamales and tortillas. We don't do that anymore. I don't even know how to make tortillas or tamales. We go to Granny's tamales and we go to Super S for tortillas. But really, inspire you. I love it when my children get together and we get to remember things and talk about each other in fun ways and revisit back then and bring it forward. It's so much fun. So let me summarize it by saying, love yourself for who you are. Love your parents for what they give you. And love God for the blessings He will give you always. Be an inspiration. Take the Mackey Challenge. How can you inspire somebody else?
Yes, ma'am. Miss Alvarez, I appreciate you, and I'm so grateful that you came to hang out with me and do this podcast. Thanks, Carla, for driving her, and I love you very much.
Thank you, Gabe, for having us here into South Texas, George West, Three Rivers, wherever you are within our listening voice. We are family, and don't forget that.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Gabe Molina Podcast.